Hi, it's Morgan with 1455. It is our mission to advance the art and craft of the written word and to build a dynamic and innovative creative community. We offer a variety of free online and in person programs, which are fully supported by our sponsors and by viewers like you. If you would like to make a donation of any amount, please visit 1455litarts.org and click support. Your contribution will be greatly appreciated. We'll see you on the next one.
Welcome back to another edition of the 1455 interview, the gift that keeps giving. I am loving continuing to talk to writers, hearing some similar themes, hearing some very different answers, all of which are giving us valuable insight into what makes a diverse and amazing group of writers tick. And today, I'm doubly excited, because this will be my first time talking to Gina Frangello, but also this is a preview of sorts for 1455's author event in December. On December 3rd, we're going to have a special reading with a bunch of contributors to the amazing anthology Alone Together, which we have featured at our Lit Fest. We had a 1455 interview with Jennifer Hope, who edited this volume. She's going to be there along with Gina and some other writers. More information about that. Today, it's all about Gina. Let me introduce her. She's the Sunday editor for The Rumpus and the fiction. Oh, not anymore?
No, I'm the creative nonfiction editor at LARB at the LA Review of Books.
Okay, so wow, well, I might not have any. So, our faculty of the UCR Palm Desert Slow Residency.
No, that was years ago.
Wow.
I teach at Lake Forest College and University of Illinois at Chicago, where I'm finishing my PhD.
Completely. You take the mic is hereby
passed.
I'm
so sorry.
No, and it's funny because I almost always check the bios, but I feel like I got this. I'm trying to remember who gave this to me or where I got it. Maybe, hopefully not your website.
I don't know, but yeah, it's in any case so I teach at two different places. I have still been the faculty editor over at the Coachella Review through UCR Palm Desert, and I'm working at LARB now, and I have a business with the writer Emily Rapp. It's called Circe Consulting, and we do developmental editing, ghostwriting classes online, that sort of thing.
Well, I'll make sure when I put this on our YouTube and website, we'll include links to all the relevant stuff, especially how people can find you online.
Brilliant. Thank you.
So, my apologies, but maybe this is a good reminder for both of us to check our sources, because now I want to know where I got that bio from so that we make sure it's updated. But for the purposes of today's discussion, also the author of My Sister's Continent and Slut Lullabies, which is an unbelievably cool title, and that's already been added to my to-read list. Gina, welcome, and also, again, contributor to the Alone Together anthology. So we will look forward to talking about that. Today, let's talk about the 1455 interview. As always, I will put us on the clock. We are at 1455. Okay, Gina, let's go. What's the first book that made you want to be a writer, or a book that changed your life?
Probably The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera. And definitely Two Girls Fat and Thin by Mary Gateskill. So I would say that those two books, one of which I read the Kundera in college, and then Two Girls Fat and Thin I must have read in about 1992 or 93. And those two books together really seemed to tap into what I wanted to aim to do as a writer, as a fiction writer, and were incredibly inspiring and informative to me.
So thank you for that. And, we've done almost 30 of these at this point, and that's the first time Kundera has come up, which actually, now that I hear it, surprises me. I'll just add on a very sardonic note, I read him at a pretty pivotal age, and it was a mixed blessing because I was probably in my early 20s, and it was so influential and positive that I then had to spend the next 5 years getting it out of my system because I was trying to write like him. And you can't be 22 and do what he does. In fact, most people can't be 72 and do what he does, but unbelievable, brilliant writer. Okay, how about, who would you name as your most profound artistic influence?
Well, definitely. I mean, I feel like both of those writers go into that category as well. Probably also, have you read the Book of Daniel? Dr. O's Book of Daniel. That was an amazing artistic influence on me. I was writing my sister's continent at the time that I read that book. And I mean, it really just exploded along with Kundera's use of third person editorial omniscient. That book just really exploded what point of view could do. And point of view is a bit of my obsession in my fiction writing. That book kind of blew the top of my head off.
Right on. Okay. And that book hasn't come up in this series. So again, I always get a little thrill when we get new, actually it's more often than not, we get new names, but it's just good to broaden the scope so people can have more books to add to their lists. How about an album or movie or both that you recommend without reservation?
Oh God. So I'm obsessed with Jason Isbell's Southeastern. So I don't know if you're familiar with him or that album, but I feel like that album is just a perfect album. Like there's not a clunker on the whole album, and just his songwriting is incredible. He's an amazing guitar player. He's an amazing singer, but really the lyrics, I feel like Cover Me Up and Elephant are two songs that pretty much convey a novel in a song. And so I'd say that album.
Cool. All right. And it's good to get some contemporary blood in here. So, right on. Okay, this is a tough one, but a fun one. How about the best first or last line of any book ever?
Oh God. I only glanced at the question, so I didn't see this one. So the first one that comes to mind, I mean, I'm not going to say like it's the best in history, but the first one that comes to mind is my dear friend Jill Alexander Espalm's opening line in Hausfrau, where it says, "Anna was a good wife, mostly." I love that opening line. So, so props to Jill.
Absolutely. Good. Okay. How about an underrated author that you'd like to give a shout out to?
So I have a lot of friends who I consider to be underrated authors. Definitely one of my mentors, Chris Mazza, who is over at the University of Illinois at Chicago's program for writers, and who has published many books. I feel like that she never quite attained like the popular reception that I think she should have, even though she attained a lot of critical acclaim. I feel like that's true of many of my friends in sort of the indie lit community. There are so many amazing writers who don't get widespread attention.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of navigating this interesting time, right, where it's never been easier to reach a wide audience, thanks to the internet and social media, but there's also more content out there. So I don't imagine there's ever been an easy time, but it just seems like trying to get people to discover, lesser known writers is an even more arduous task, but one I think we all do with as much love and care as we can do.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you one underrated novel from recently is my very dear friend Rachel Dwoskin's novel Banshee, which Rachel has attained quite a bit of critical and popular acclaim in other books. This book came out on an indie. It didn't I don't think it really broke to a wide audience, but she's brilliant in general, but it's my favorite of her books. I think it's just, it's a wild ride. I think every woman in America should read Banshee.
Okay. I'll make sure I note that when I do the write-up on this, so we make sure that these books are getting the props that they deserve. So thanks for both of those shout outs. Okay. The most important question of all time, not really. Why have you not read Moby Dick? Or if you have, is there a classic that you've been meaning to get around to checking out?
Sadly, I have read Moby Dick. I had to read it in a graduate seminar. I didn't start out as an English major. I have a master's in counseling psychology. I used to be a therapist. So there are a lot of classics I haven't read. In terms of that, like I fell in love with Faulkner when I read him as a graduate student. I had never read him before, but there's also a lot of people I don't mind skipping. One of these days, I feel like I'm going to read James Joyce, but that may just be a story I'm telling myself.
That has definitely come up, and I've read, I think along with Moby Dick and maybe a couple of other classics, it seems like Ulysses is this kind of line in the sand where there are some writers that worship it, some that are indifferent, and some that proudly say, I'm never going to read that. So I don't think there's any shame in any of those responses. All right, another tough one, but I very potentially insightful. If you could say, is there a single theme or issue that your work seeks to address?
So I mean, not a single theme, but I do explore like kind of gendered power dynamics a lot. I definitely am a writer who's really interested in like sexual psychology, which is one of the reasons, like the shout out to Gateskill and Kundera. I'm really interested in the way point of view is used in texts to convey sort of the way that truth is permeable in a novel, the way that characters perceive each other and events in different ways. So all of those things I think go through all of my fiction.
Well, so along those lines, what would you say is the ideal entree for someone that's unfamiliar with your work? What should they pick up to get a real taste of that?
Probably my most widely read book is A Life in Men, which came out on Algonquin from 2014, in 2014. But I feel like both that and my last novel, Every Kind of Wanting, which is on Counterpoint, my memoirs coming out on Counterpoint as well, are more mature works than my earlier novels. They're definitely, I think, probably more in vein of what I'm working with these days.
Right on. Okay, cool. Okay, so I tend to combine the next two questions because people either want to talk about it all day or don't. The notion of writing routine and writer's block. Do you believe in either? Have you experienced? Do you have a routine? What are your thoughts on those two thorny topics?
I mean, I've been asked this question in a lot of interviews because everyone likes to hear about writers' processes. And I also have been an editor for many years, so people would talk about it from that perspective as well. I'm a binge writer. So, I mean, I am basically like, if you're trying to convince someone that they need to write every day, I'm kind of like a cautionary tale in the other direction. Sometimes I don't write for literally 9 months. And, then I might write a draft of a novel in a couple of months of kind of just like a fevered pitch, and then it might take me 3 years to revise the novel, so it's not like I'm incredibly fast from start to the end of a project. But I don't really have a writing routine. I'm always also teaching. I'm usually editing at least one. There have been times at up to 3 magazines or presses. I have a really busy professional life. I have 3 kids. I'm married, so what I'm going to do on a given day really depends on kind of the demands and deadlines. But when I write, I need a block because I will become very obsessive and I kind of can't pull myself out of it. So usually summers tend to be my intensive writing time when I'm not teaching.
Yep. That resonates with what a lot of other writers have said. And I think one theme that this interview series is putting forth is that for a lot of us, having a routine or having writer's block is a luxury. You can afford to have a routine if you can afford to write all the time. And I think most working writers look at it as a luxury, and it's something they take very seriously. But I share with you not wanting to have a prescriptive. I love reading about the process and what makes different people tick, but invariably it seems that it's the more successful ones financially that cultivate these daily practices because they can. And
Sure.
A lot of us maybe don't have that opportunity. How about a setback, artistic or otherwise, that in hindsight maybe helped put you on the trajectory that you're on now?
Well, so I would say basically I had a few setbacks, as many writers do early in my career. I mean, I'm on my 4th literary agent. I've had her now for probably, I guess, about 10 or 11 years, and I adore her, and I'm never, ever leaving her until one of us dies. So, but probably early in my career, kind of going through agents, someone not selling a manuscript at a trade house and then not wanting to send it to smaller houses, and me ending up doing that myself. And I was an editor at an indie press and also, had edited at magazines, and I was really seeped in the indie community. And so I think the things that originally seemed like setbacks, like not making a quick sale for a bunch of money, ended up really shaping my career in really positive ways, because my entrenchment in the indie literary community has largely defined my adult professional life, and almost everyone I'm close to in the literary world I met through that scene in one way or another.
So that probably tees up the next question. So if it's redundant, you don't even have to go there, but how would you say you've developed your career? Maybe expound on that a little bit in terms of, what you've done or what you've seen.
Well, definitely, the first thing I did that just started to open doors for me in terms of relationships in the literary world is that I was very hot to work at a literary magazine. Like I wanted to be involved in the community as soon as I started graduate school at University of Illinois at Chicago 20 years ago, like my first bout of grad school that didn't take. I started volunteering as a reader, and I ended up moving up to an associate editor, and then I ended up taking up over the magazine, and then I ended up launching a book press out of it. And so those things, which let me know how the literary world worked from kind of the inside, shaped what I wanted to be involved with as a writer. And so my first two books both came out on indie presses. The first one, after not having sold quickly in New York, and my then agent having said, like, okay, well, we're going to shelf it. And instead I sent it to Lydia Yuknovic, who was running Chiasmus at the time, and she accepted it in 3 days. And so that was how my first novel came out. And my second one came out on a press that doesn't exist anymore, called Emergency Press, which I had a fabulous experience with. I had so much fun on that particular press. And so even then, when my third book was with my current agent and going out shopping, I had two offers, and one of them was from an imprint of Random House, and the other one was from Algonquin. And I ended up going with Algonquin because of its sort of small indie sensibility, even though it operates on a much larger scale. And that's been true for me with Counterpoint now. And I mean, I just really like that community.
Right on. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Could you define or explain what literary success means to you?
Oh God. Honestly, it means people reaching out to you and telling you that your work meant something to them, that it helped them in some way, that they felt less alone, that they felt recognized, they felt seen. Obviously there are people who do become wildly successful financially or whatever. Most of us don't. Like, if you're in it for that as a writer, I think you're not in the right place, because there's never any guarantee that that's going to happen to you. I try to view my work as much as possible as almost kind of like outside the economy, and that I need to make my money in other ways and support myself in other ways. And that keeps me able to be true to what I really want to write, instead of thinking about how a market will respond to it. And so I really do look at it as like individual connections that I make with readers.
That last line, perfection. You probably won't be surprised to hear that both either sarcastically or literally, money has never come up as an answer to that question. It doesn't surprise me at all, but it's nice to hear the different ways writers articulate what success means to them, because most writers do recognize pretty early on there's going to be a lot of rejection, and there's likely not going to be a lot of money. But I think the key takeaway from all these conversations, it echoes a similar theme, which is, if you're not doing it to satisfy yourself and you're not in love with the process, get out, because it's going to be a very long, unsatisfying road.
Amen to that.
So is there something that you wish you had known as a writer 10 or even 20 years ago?
I feel like I actually, because of my work in the literary world as an editor, that I probably knew more than a lot of people know going in, and it made me a little more chill about certain things. Like I always understood that editors were not in any way like the enemy in ivory towers who, I understood from my perspective. I mean, I had to reject work, and I had to reject good work because of space, because of money, all of these different things. So I feel like I've actually been really privileged in terms of what I've known going in, and how that's helped me to navigate my career.
Well, that's a very modest answer, but I think the other side of that, I'll throw back at you and say, good on you for recognizing strategically that that was the place to be, and you learned those life lessons and you were willing to put in the time. So I hear what you're saying, and your modesty is very refreshing, but I also think, that's a wonderful example, especially for a younger aspiring writer, to realize there are a lot of different ways to skin this cat, and hoping that you write a bestseller out of the gate, although we wish that for everyone, is likely not going to be the trajectory. But immersing yourself in some kind of community that's outside your own head is usually going to yield good things.
I mean, I tell every student and every group I ever talk to, essentially, like, ask not what, the literary community can do for you, but what you can do for the literary community, and you'll have a happy life in your literary life.
Again, unsurprisingly, but that's a theme that resurfaces often to the point where it's now just inviolable. I mean, it's so demonstrably true from other people's experience. I would love you to echo something that also has come up in this series, and I've read a lot and experienced for aspiring writers. When an editor takes the time to say, I can't accept this, but I'd love to see more of your work, they mean it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there are usually tiers within a publication. And if you've made it to someone who actually is kind of like authorized to give you specific feedback and to invite more work, that person does mean it. And they have a reasonable expectation that work would make it back to them, because they're high up enough in the food chain of that publication that they can say that and not just be like, jerking you around.
Good. Well, I'm glad to add your name to the growing chorus of voices really affirming that it really does. There are some rejections are less equal than others, and there is such a thing as a positive rejection.
It's true.
Okay, you've already dropped so much wisdom, but on a closing note, is there a 1 minute or so exhortation you would have for an aspiring writer that's specifically looking for advice?
No, I mean, I think really exactly what I was saying, like, find a way to get involved. I tell everybody, literary magazines and indie presses are often looking for people who will do work for them if your financial situation allows you to have any free time that you don't have to work for money. Try to do some volunteering so that you can learn how that community works, so that you can see firsthand what comes in and what you're reading and what makes a story work or not work. And that will help your writing more than, basically 10 years of graduate school. If you're reading and understanding why this story, you die if you didn't get to accept it, and this story is really good, but you're fine if it goes in a different magazine, like that nuance. It's not about learning what stories aren't good enough to be published, because that's sort of self-evident. It's discerning between what's good, what's competent, what's definitely publishable versus what makes you tick is invaluable. So just get out there and find a way to get involved in the community. And the online world makes that much easier than it was when, in the 90s when I was coming up.
Hear, hear. Well, Gina, thank you for all that. And I'm going to put all this in the write-up, but especially after my aborted introduction, which I apologize for again. How do people find you online?
I'm at ginafrangello.org, and I'm also at cerseiconsulting.net for my business.
Excellent. Well, the good news is we will see you again soon.
Yes.
Enjoy your Thanksgiving, be safe, and we will have an amazing conversation on December 3rd with other contributors to the anthology. So for now, thank you for being here, and I appreciate it. Look forward to talking to you more soon, Gina.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, cheers.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you follow us on our social media channels to stay up to date with what's new for 1455. And also, we would like to ask for your support. We depend on champions like you to keep us going. Visit 1455litarts.org and click support to make a contribution in any amount. We'll see you soon.